Yeah, yeah.
Is there? There's still nickel and a nickel? Any questions for Amelia? Thanks for your report, and as we all know, you better get home and start that project right now. All right, great. Next, we're moving into our budget workshop, and we have a number of specific items that we're going to discuss. I think Dr. Troughton would like to initially talk a little bit about the recent per pupil expenditure report that just was released by the Mass Department of Education, before we get into.
But I'm actually going to ask Mr. Nelson to do that.
Okay.
He put together some notes on this. The preliminary pupil personnel, pupil expenditures is always, I think, controversial in North Reading in that people question what goes into that calculation. And one of the areas that the auditors, of course, our budget is audited every year by an independent outside auditor, and that report is presented to the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and the School Committee. And one of the areas that came up was the reporting of retiree benefits, which is substantial. It's a substantial expenditure on the part of the town, but in this case is appropriately listed as an expenditure under the school department, and it would contribute directly to per pupil expenditures. And it's very interesting, and I'll let Carl talk about it to see what impact including those expenditures had on the overall per pupil expenditures. I'm very confident that North Reading Public Schools manages its money quite well, despite the concerns raised by the writer in the transcript last week. Interestingly, I have been following what's been happening in Maine, and if you go to the site for consolidation, you'll see one of the models that they're advocating, because Maine has so many rural school districts that are very, very small in size. But one of the target models is to develop a school district consolidation of 2,500 students.
Like us?
And we have 2,800 students. It was interesting to see what they would allocate for central office administration under those conditions. They would allocate a superintendent, and they would allocate 1.5 administrative assistants or secretaries. We have one. They would allocate 2 in payroll. We have 2. And they would allocate a business manager. So it's probably a good segue to Carl to talk about the per pupil.
He's not as good a business manager as we have.
Right. Before Carl does this, just to make it clear, until fiscal 2007, the town was reporting our health benefits for retirees when it should have been coming under our budget in the per pupil cost. So that was an oversight somewhere along the line that never got corrected. The auditor finally picked up on it, and that's now corrected. So moving forward, those numbers will always be in our budget, healthcare costs for retirees.
Regardless of whether you think those things should be part of our
Right.
budget, it's all a
They will
formula, it's the
always-
same
Right.
for everybody, it's apples to apples.
Right, it's a state formula.
Right, and they will always.
That'll take us out of being at the bottom, maybe?
No,
No, it
not
doesn't.
much.
It doesn't.
Another 12 below us
Right.
instead of 9.
Right.
It really doesn't.
Actually, I look at these numbers, Carol, and I hope you'll get to it, but when I compare the insurance, the retirement, the insurance numbers for active employees,
Yes.
the last 2 years with this year dropped dramatically, and I'm wondering if they didn't include our retired people in that number. I'd like to see how they broke that down.
One of our unit ventilators is very loud, so we're asking members of the audience to come a little closer so
Yeah,
they
we're
can hear
gonna
us.
say that.
By all means, if anyone
I'm not
can't
turning
hear,
it
they
off.
can move up.
Well, what I'd like to do is provide a brief survey of the fiscal year '07 per pupil expenditures. These were released by the Department of Education last week, and I've posted all of this information on the North Reading Public Schools website, so for anyone who would like to delve into this deeper, see some of the context for this, or some of the background for this, or some of the source numbers for this, it's all there. There's also a link that provides you excruciating detail of all of the different ways North Reading Schools spends its funds. As Dr. Troughton indicated, the information that I'm about to speak about and that is posted on the website is audited by an independent auditor. So I believe it can be verified in that fashion. What this per pupil expenditure document tries to do is present Massachusetts school spending data in a way that is comprehensive, comparable, and transparent to the public. All of the data that is shown is consistent amongst districts. Folks from time to time have suggested that it's an apples to oranges comparison. That's not true, because all expenditures, for example, that are made by the town of North Reading on behalf of the school department, even though it is not in our budget, is included in this data. In fact, we have to depend upon general government to provide us that information. And the issue that was spoken of earlier, the retiree health insurance, was data that had not been included in the general government report. So on an annual basis, I ask general government to provide to the school department a comprehensive listing of those expenditures they make on behalf of the school department. To give you examples of that information, those kinds of expenditures are not included in the school budget. So we cannot independently determine or verify it. Examples of these would be school crossing guards. Individuals that perform that duty are employees of the town, literally employees of the police department, and so we will ask on an annual basis, what will your costs for school crossing guards? Other larger examples include health insurance costs, life insurance costs for employees, pension costs for employees, the costs of providing the audit. Because the audit is controlled by general government, not the school department, we actually pay for it, but they select the auditor. There are many other examples, snow plowing, and on and on. I'd be happy to provide a comprehensive list, and I'll detail that as we get through some of these pages. So we take the information that general government provides, and frankly, we just add that to the school budget. So it's a pretty straightforward document. If our budget as it is this year, if it's $20,701,000, we know that's our starting point. We add to that the costs that general government provides us. We then have to break that down into several hundred categories, but the bottom lines don't change. Any pessimistic views about the validity of the per pupil data really aren't valid, because again, you're taking the school budget, which is a public amount, adding it to the general government amount, and dividing that by the number of students we have. The number of students we have is computed. It's also not an easy computation, but we literally provide to the Department of Education the number of students in membership each and every day of 181 days. Because every day it changes. There are people moving out, people moving in. So then we take the average, and that is our comprehensive school membership data that is divided into the total amount of money we spend. So that's a little bit of an overview for what per pupil data is. As I noted, that the spending not only includes the school committee appropriation and the municipal appropriation outside the school committee budget, but it also includes other funds that we use to support kids in school. We include all of our federal grants, our state grants, our circuit breaker funds, our revolving accounts, our school lunch funds. Each and every dollar that is expended is included in this computation. And the same rules are used for each and every district in Massachusetts. They're filling in the same report, is audited in the same fashion. On the website and in your packet, what I did was I took a comparative look at the benchmark peer group that was selected as part of our municipal benchmarking project that we did last spring. in this fall. I took those communities and I compared those communities' spending in 4 categories to North Reading spending, just to give us a sense in FY07 if it had changed very much since the previous years. So if you look at that first page, I first selected administration costs. Thought it would be interesting to compare North Reading's per pupil cost for administration versus the benchmark peer communities. And as you can see by that bar graph, the average per pupil expenditure for the benchmark communities for administration is about $330. North Reading's expenditure in this category of administration is $275. I would say the average of our peer communities somewhere in the, I don't know, $350 per pupil range. Administration costs, incidentally, are salary costs for administrators, which largely include anyone with an administrative role within the district, and that would be the superintendent, business manager, principals, and any other non-teaching department heads. So, interestingly enough, North Reading is modestly, if not more than that, below our peer group in the administrative cost category.
Carl, I'll point, only 2 communities spend less than North Reading on administration per pupil of the 20 peer communities.
Thank you. The next category we compared North Reading's costs to was teaching costs, teaching salaries. You know, that's a pretty important number to be tracking and to be quantifying and analyzing. The per pupil cost for teachers, the average of the peer communities is about $4,150 per pupil. In other words, we're expending $4,150 per pupil on teaching costs across the board. That would be the average. North Reading is spending $3,650 per pupil. There's one community, Town of Acton, that is spending less than North Reading, and that just barely so. They're probably just below $3,600 per student. So all of the other communities are either more or quite a bit more. These are, again, our peer communities.
One of the things to remember there is that that's a reflection of, more than anything else, of class size. The more students you have in a class, the lower your cost per student is going to be.
Yes, thank you. There are 2 other comparisons we made here. The next one was operations and maintenance. We tried to select 4 disparate kinds of spending measures, you know, administration, teaching, operations, and the last one will be the total. In operations and maintenance, the average expenditure per pupil is $1,000. North Reading is expending $800 per pupil on operations and maintenance. Operation and maintenance incidentally includes heat, light, utilities, maintenance, building costs, the materials, grounds, all of the non-instructional components of operating a $20 million budget. The range here, once again, is such that there are 2 communities out of our peer group who spend less than we do, in both cases barely less. The 4th and last measure that we selected, there were literally probably 100 measures you could select. The 4th one was is just per pupil costs in total, the combination of all of the expenditures. The average for FY07 in our peer group is $10,250 per student.
10,000.
$10,250. Now this isn't the statewide average again, this is the benchmark average. So $10,250 is the average. North Reading has increased from FY06 to FY07, and our number is about $9,100 per student. The per pupil costs in our benchmark communities range from a high of Westwood, which is about $12,400, to a low, which is North Reading,
Yeah.
of $9,100.
And just to be accurate, it's $9,049. I do
Okay.
not, I do not want to make that number any higher than it is.
Okay.
I want it to be real.
Thank you, Mel. I'm looking, as you can
I
see,
know, I
I've
know,
got
you're
a
looking
graph
at the
and
chart
I'm
here, but I
approximating.
just.
Yes,